should know, hopefully. Um, Thank you for putting on the recording. Hopefully no one minds that. We want to record this so others will have an opportunity to hear what we're talking about tonight. So Gus leads the National Cybersecurity Student Association, which is growing very rapidly. A number of chapters across the country are increasing, and the student group is now closing in on 10,000, which is really wonderful to hear across the country. And soon we'll be adding international organizations where we launch our 3CS conferences in Europe and in Latin America, which will be happening next year. So a lot of growth happening with the Student Association, and the 3CS program is really the centerpiece of everything. And therefore, we thought it's important to make available to both those of you here, as well as those who might be listening to this recorded version, to learn a little bit more about what is 3CS about and how does it connect to the varying student programs, how to get involved, and probably most importantly, how to benefit from it. So that's really our topic today. And I really do want to encourage you all to ask questions as we go through the process. I will open up the chat here so I can see it if you want to pop things in chat, or feel free, since we don't have a huge number, to just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question anytime, because the purpose of this is really to be able to respond to any questions you might have. So let's start with first, what do we expect at 3CS events? So 3CS, which stands for the Cybersecurity Capabilities and Careers Symposia, keyword there, symposia being plural, because there are actually 5 separate symposium, each focused on a different target group or target topics, if you will, as it relates to the cybersecurity workforce. So the first and oldest, the granddaddy of it all, which actually is where the 3CS acronym came from, is the Community College Cyber Summit. For many years, that's what 3CS solely was. And it was so successful that it sold out all the time. And our primary sponsor early on was the National Science Foundation. They referred to this event as the signal event in cyber education. It really is where people would come to learn everything there is to know about the latest and greatest in how to learn or teach cyber. And so because of its success, NSF asked us, would you find a way to broaden it both geographically and across other stakeholder groups? And we thought about it a bit. We thought, yeah, well, sure, we could do that. In fact, it kind of started on its own, even though it's from its outset has been very much centered around the community college, because community college is just that. They're the centerpiece of every community. And so it's a great place to bring students coming out of secondary schools, those coming from the workforce looking to be retrained, those that are already in the workplace and looking to be upskilled. No matter where you are in the workforce pathway, the community college is the centerpiece. And so it connects to the university systems for those who look to go from a 2-year degree to a 4-year degree. But it also, very importantly, goes the other way around. And increasingly, more and more of those who are attending 4-year schools are looking to come to the community college to learn how to do what they've been taught about more theoretically at a university. And so it plays a role both at the beginning and the end of education, and really is the primary lifelong learning institution. And so we started focusing on community colleges, but of course, over time, all those other groups that benefit from community colleges or have some interface with community colleges were attending the event. And so we had many university attendees. In fact, it roughly was 50-50, half community college attendees and half 4-year school attendees in terms of the formal education attendees. And then we had people from the workforce, government, all these different stakeholder groups. So the Community College Cyber Summit continues in the form it's always been. It is focused on instruction and learning, and especially in an experiential capacity, because what makes community college education so unique is the fact that it is very hands-on, very much focused on preparing somebody for specific occupational requirements. The next one, though, addresses a different aspect of that scholarly community, and that's the group that's doing research or are practitioners and are looking to ensure that their work they're doing is got evidence support for it. And so we call that the Cyber Science and Practice Symposium. It is very much aligned with our journal, the Cybersecurity Skills Journal, that specifically focuses on the human factors in cybersecurity to make sure that we are taking into account the human element in designing technologies and tools and techniques, and also ensuring that the people doing the work have the capabilities they need to perform that work successfully. So that's what that symposium is about, very much targeting to the investigative aspect of cybersecurity. And then we get into the upskilling component. How do we ensure that those that are coming through these programs or may already be in the workforce possess very specific skills that are needed in today's environments? And that's what the Capability Maturity Symposium is about. And it offers micro-credentials as well as ongoing access to instructional materials that enable the attendee to gain a great deal of expertise in a very specific topic. Because these go beyond the time of the actual conference, and because they involve outside organizations that are providing these, if you will, types of boot camps on site, there is an additional cost for the Capability Maturity Symposium. All these others are included with general admission, but that one, there are a separate costs associated with them because of the materials and the expertise we need to have in order to be successful with those programs. Then we get to the Cyber Game Simulations and Competition Symposium. So that one should be fairly obvious what it's about, but it really has two parts. First, there hasn't really been a science of cyber gaming and cyber competitions. There's a lot of people that have been throwing these out there, and we hear about more of them each and every day, but there hasn't been a lot of work done to make sure that they're actually measuring what they say they're going to measure, that they're actually valid measures of skills, and that they've been constructed in a way that they have what in the gaming area is called game balance, meaning that they're aligned with the prerequisite capability of those who are competing. And CyberWatch actually had done a study a number of years ago of one of the largest, now the world's largest, competition. And what we found in the early days, it was actually turning more people away from cybersecurity than it was bringing them in. In fact, nearly 2/3 or 3/4 of those who played the game quit doing any more cyber stuff because they performed so badly. And so they really weren't ready for it. And lacking that readiness and having the challenge put them in a situation where they were frustrated and were faced with a potential reality that they just weren't cut out for this work. It caused them to quit too early, because had the game been more properly designed and aligned with the capabilities expected of those playing that game or entering that competition, that they would have found it actually quite exhilarating, because they could have felt, yeah, I could do this. I just can't do it yet, but I can learn how to do it. It's not so far beyond me that I don't feel like I can ever do it. And so that kind of game balance we need to learn more about. The other thing that this symposium is going to focus on is simulations, actually creating true simulators in the way like an aircraft simulator works. I'm sure everybody knows that we once had, not long ago, a pilot who had to land a jet on a river. You do that the first time, you die, everybody else dies. But it wasn't the first time. It was the first time in an actual plane, mind you, but he had done it hundreds of times in a simulator, and therefore he had a pretty good idea of how to do that. In fact, was very comfortable doing it, really landed on the river without any hesitation and really without any issue, and saved the lives of everybody on the plane. So we need that kind of robust expertise in cyber. To do that, you can't just be going into a virtual machine, because a virtual machine is kind of a black box. It just does what it does, and there's no way to instrument it very carefully like we do in a flight simulator to very accurately create the conditions that somebody is going to face and make sure that they can face them effectively, like landing on a river. So simulators are a new thing for cyber. And we're working with some folks at Microsoft, who's one of our sponsors for 3CS, and others, to develop these simulation technologies and what we'll have at 3CS in the Cyber Ready Sim. And then finally, the area that is still evolving, there's lots of different kinds of games and competitions. So we give chance for people to experiment with those in the Cyber Ready arena and in the Cyber Ready arcade. So the difference being, an arcade is game focused, it's individual. So you can just hone up your own skills, and you're really competing against yourself, your last score. But in the arena, you're competing against others. And so those others will typically be teams of individuals in a competition. One of those that was introduced in 3CS this last year, very excited about, is 2CDC. You may have heard about CCDC. That's the Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition that has been operating for more than 20 years, and we've run that for more than 20 years in Mid-Atlantic. But it is a challenge for those in two-year schools to really get to the level of being able to compete nationally with universities with master's degree students on their teams, right? And it's understandable because, you know, somebody with 6, 8, 10 years of experience, sometimes PhDs are on those teams, right? To compete with somebody with 2 years is really asking a lot. So we introduced this year a 2-year college defense competition. And its first round ran at our Mid-Atlantic 3CS, at our Northeast 3CS, and our Southeast 3CS. And the national championship happened to come, or a national champion happened to come from the Northeast. It was Northampton Community College, who actually held, accidentally really, the Northeast 3CS at their campus. So we're going to be redoing that, of course, for 2025, the 24-25 academic year. It will start with the qualifying round in the Southwest, and then the qualifying round in the Great Lakes, and then come eventually back around through Mid-Atlantic and Northeast and Southeast to the national championship next year in Tampa. So we're hoping that more student teams, obviously, across the country compete. There's no constraint to the number of teams that can come from an institution, but each team can only have 5 members. So we encourage them to have multiple teams. And for those who are not in a 2-year program, they still can participate. They just can't win that regional event, and the top, by the way, top 3 qualifiers in the region get expense paid trip to Tampa for the national championship. So those who are not from a 2-year school can still participate. They can still get scores. They can still see how they're doing against others. They just can't go to the national championship. Okay, then lastly, and probably, we have a question. Tracy.
I have a question. When you asked about the you can have 5 members, so you can have 5 members for gaming and 5 members for the symposium and different activities. Am I correct?
Well, you can have as many people involved in a symposium as you wish. What I'm saying is the 5-member constraint is for the 2CDC team. So the team can have 5 members on it, and but you can have more than one team. And in fact, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, Northampton actually had 2 teams, one of which qualified and went all the way. There was one school, I can't remember who it was, it had 3 teams, and one of which qualified but didn't win, but did go to Tampa. So you can have as many teams as you want compete in 2CDC, but only each team has to be limited to 5 people.
Okay.
Okay, so last and probably certainly not least is the Cyber Technology and Careers Symposium. So this is an exhibit hall. And it has 2 different functions depending on the day. So we run the regional 3CSs on a Friday at late afternoon, evening, and all day Saturday. And on the Friday evening, we run the career fair side, or the career symposium side of the Technology and Career Symposium. And on Saturday, we run the Technology Symposium. So the big difference, of course, being is who is exhibiting. In the career fair, we have 2 different exhibit halls. One for employers to be the exhibitor. And that's something you've probably all been familiar with, called a job fair. So they have a booth, and those who are interested in understanding what opportunities are available will visit their booth and learn about those opportunities. Now, the downside to job fairs has always been that employers never know who they're going to see. And so they don't send their hiring managers because they don't, frankly, want to waste their time. So they send marketing people who are going to hand out information about the company and about their opportunities. The job seekers come thinking they're going to get a job. It's called a job fair after all, but they don't get a job. They get information that with some diligence they could find online. And so what's the purpose? Well, it does help to make people aware of each other. And so employers get aware of candidates, candidates get aware of employers, but frankly, neither gets what they really want, which is hiring talent. So we introduced last year the talent fair. The talent fair runs oftentimes across the hall, literally on the other side, or sometimes it's in a different location, depending on our facilities. And it's where the job candidate has a booth. And employers are either prior to the event or at the event matched with those that meet the needs of that employer. And then they can perform interviews right on site. And we've had many cases where, in fact, the majority of cases in the one we did in our event in Mid-Atlantic last year, the majority of those who participated got jobs right there, that they were hired on the spot. And some of those were very, very high level jobs, like at the National Security Agency. So matching capability to employer need is the magic to get both parties to get what they want. The employer finds talent, the talent finds a job. And that's a big part of this 3CS event. The other thing, of course, is on Saturday, the technology fair. And that's where vendors can showcase their new tools, their new technologies, or new techniques for doing things. And people can learn about those and get a chance to experience them a little bit. Okay, so where does 3CS happen? We have aligned 3CS with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency's regions. So CISA, as it's usually called, a division of the Department of Homeland Security, has identified 10 regions throughout the United States. Now, eventually we'll have 10 3CSs leading up to national. That'll take a little while. So we've combined some of the smaller regions and actually one large region together as we start to roll these out. So right now, Region 3 has its own. That's the Mid-Atlantic 3CS. Region 4 has its own. That's the Southeast 3CS. And the Great Lakes has its own. That's the Great Lakes 3CS. But the others right now we're kind of combining. So regions 1 and 2 is the Northeast 3CS. Region 6 and 9, which is arguably the largest region, especially because it goes all the way out to Guam, is combined into the Southwest 3CS. That's going to be happening in San Antonio this year at the end of September. I'll come back to that in a little bit. And then we're also going to be combining in the future potentially these other 3 regions, which right now don't have yet a 3CS. And we're looking for host institutions to either host these individually, or perhaps we combine 7 and 8 or 8 and 10 to create another region. So eventually, though, there'll be 3CS events throughout these with, for the next few years, the national event happening in Tampa, Florida. And then eventually that'll rotate. As I mentioned, we've had over this last year, we've already had 3 3CSs. So the one at Mid-Atlantic was in March, the one in Northeast was in April, and Southeast, which was combined with National this year, was in May. Okay. So coming up, as I mentioned, Southwest 3CS is September 27 and 28. And Great Lakes will be the following month, October 25 and 26 in St. Paul, Minnesota. Those QR codes and, of course, those links will take you to the page that describes these in more detail and allow you to register. Now, you definitely want to think about registering early. There are stipends available based on a first-come, first-served basis and based on the type of registration. So there's basically a priority system. For instance, students who belong to NCSA chapters are given higher priority over students who are members of NCSA, but not yet in a chapter, versus students who are not yet members, or I should say premium members of NCSA. So they might be participant members where they have attended an event, but they haven't an annual subscription to NCSA, which is very inexpensive, $19.99 a year. But with that $19.99, you'll by far more than pay for it by the discount you receive to attend a 3CS, as well as the opportunity to receive a travel stipend to attend 3CS. So also those who submit proposals and have their session at one of these events receives not only a travel stipend, but they receive a participant stipend as well. And so those are things that we really want to encourage, of course, the students especially, to propose these, because there's no better way to not only develop those skills, as I mentioned earlier, but more importantly, for them to showcase those skills to employers that are really looking for them. And we have with us tonight, actually, Dana Winter, who is heading up our Cybersecurity Skills Journal. That journal will be publishing the transcripts of the dialogue sessions that most students are choosing to lead, although certainly they can lead an evidence-based session or a demonstration session. But all of these are possibilities to get an article published and have that as well to add to your resume. But having on your resume that you led a workshop at a conference immediately elevates you in the mind and eyes of employers. And so definitely register early, get the opportunity to get access to those funds and get access to some support services I'll talk more about in just a second. So as I mentioned, there are 3 types of sessions for 3CS. The first is a dialogue. A dialogue is just what it sounds like. It's a conversation among the participants. And what we ask the proposers of a dialogue is all they really need day one is an idea, a topic, something they think they would like to know more about, and they think therefore others would too. And they will work with our team of review mentors, and typically they'll be assigned multiple review mentors to help them think through that topic idea, develop it into a full proposal, which is nothing more than a structured extended abstract. So it's not a heavy lift in and of itself, but it does require the development of some things like a list of questions that will be asked the attendees so that we can understand this topic, or we can see how the topic applies in varying settings and get the experiences and expertise of those in the room. Now, to ensure we are getting expertise and experience, we ask that dialogue proposer to identify at least 3 people that will attend their session who will come with that expertise. Now, attendance can be virtual. All these sessions are hybrid, so they can be virtual attendees. Even the author or session organizer can be virtual. But obviously, there are some advantages to being on site. And again, the stipends will help support that. So those in the room would be either those who, again, decided to attend and be part of that expert panel, or those who just want to contribute to the topic. And so they'll have a conversation led by the session organizer, utilizing the questions that were provided in the proposal, as well as some follow-on things as the dialogue ensues, to help the group come to a consensus, if you will, about the topic. And that skill of consensus building, consensus aggregating, and really the whole investigative approach to what's called a focus group, which is really the method behind a dialogue, is one of the most common techniques of consultants. And cybersecurity today, more and more so, is becoming a consulting industry. Even those who hire cyber people are looking them to consult with their users, with their technology providers, and with others to make sure that they're doing what they're doing in a secure fashion. And so gaining consulting expertise is not only needed to be a consultant, which these sessions will enable someone to do immediately. Once conducting a dialogue session, that individual can put that on their resume, but can do more than that. They can actually post it as something they can do for companies, for individuals that are looking to bring, or groups of individuals that are looking to better understand these issues and charge for their services in facilitating a dialogue among those participants. So it is a very classic way of starting a consulting practice, either while in school or certainly after graduating. And then evidence-based practices are just what they sound like there as well. It's reporting on some investigation that has produced some form of evidence. It could be qualitative evidence, such as case studies, or it could be quantitative evidence that might come from a study of, let's say, an experimental analysis, or perhaps looking longitudinally across the development across case studies or other environments that looked at change over time, and therefore we can create greater inferences from them. Or perhaps it's aggregating lots of other studies together under what's called a metasynthesis or a meta-analysis to produce really more robust evidence. But again, because 3CS is all about interaction, those presentations are not just about a presentation. We really don't want our organizers to be just presenting like they would in a classroom as an instructor. They're there to encourage dialogue here too. And here the dialogue is around, well, how does this evidence perhaps apply in different settings? Does it generalize? Is it specific only to certain conditions? What alternatives might be to the findings that are shared? Perhaps what was found in that instance might be counter to what some of the participants of that session have found in their own environments. And being able to gather that kind of nuanced data around the evidence is really how a science advances. And that's the same approach that medical science, aviation science, safety science, and many others have used to take their disciplines from anecdote to replicable execution. And we need to get there because right now we're chasing our tails because we really don't know what works. So we need these evidence-based practices. And then finally, demonstrations. Of course, that should also be obvious. It's showcasing how to do something, a technique, a tool, whatever. But again, the key is interaction. So the demonstrations are done in a lab where what is being demonstrated is used by those in the room. And so the facilitator there, the session organizer, is not only giving some instruction on how to use it, but along the way, responding to feedback and questions and other issues that arise from the use of what's being demonstrated. Okay, each one of these is given a team of peer reviewers and mentors to help develop the ideas. So once again, all that's required day one is a topic and a few basic pieces of information. All right, then that topic is developed through what we call proposal development workshops, which have been held both in person and virtual. We'll be doing many more of the virtual ones because that gives more people an opportunity to easily participate. And it encourages a diverse perspective from those who are in the room, but those also who are assigned to that group or might be interested in being assigned. So what happens often at these proposal development workshops is we have our peer review teams who are kind of figuring out who do they want to work with. And they'll listen in on one of these and then say, oh, that one's really interesting. I'd like to be a member of that review and mentoring team. So it's a matchmaking process as well as an opportunity, of course, for the session proposer to get really good feedback. And again, Tracy experienced some of this. Maybe you can share some of your thoughts, if you'd like, as to how that went for you and for your fellow students.
It was fun. It was great. A lot. We came across the issue of not having mentors closer within the development stage of it. Everything was fine when we went to Tampa the first time, and then in the middle of it, but it was unbeknown to us that it was another team and that the gaming was added to it. So we lacked that information. We didn't get that information. So people that wanted to participate in both couldn't because they were both going on at the same time. But also, like I said, the mentoring and the training aspect of it, we were lacking that. So we didn't get the full, I want to say, aspect of what we were supposed to gain during that the last what was it, the 2C DC. But my confusion is during our session we had 4-year college students amongst us, so we didn't know who was a part of who and what we were supposed to speculate. But because we were in that auditorium, we got to see the 4-year college. But coming from a 2-year college, that wouldn't benefit. Well, it benefited us because they were very talented, and one young guy, I think they was from St. John, I want to say. I can't think. That gentleman was telling me they've been practicing for like almost 4 or 5 years, and they have steady sessions. We didn't have that at all. So that was something that needed to be added, and now we need to know how to incorporate it into what we're studying also at the college to make it impact the kids more. Like you say, they get frustrated and then nobody wants to participate. So
yeah, that's a great point. That's definitely mostly about the 2CDC. There's also the opportunity to present sessions and run sessions. But the 2CDC, you raise a good point. It's something you got to do day in and day out. And so that's something the Student Association is going to do more of, create more of those opportunities. But we also have the capacity now to help support, practice sessions at the schools right throughout the year. So you'll have plenty of time to get prepared for next year's event at the Mid-Atlantic, and hopefully we can get those in place. So I appreciate that feedback. Okay. So as I mentioned, a very key part of the 3CS events is this talent fair. And so it is often referred to as a reverse job fair. So what it means by reverse, as I mentioned briefly, is that instead of the employers having a booth, the candidate has a booth. So employers are coming to visit the candidate instead of candidate going to visit the employer. And there is a trifold board or a poster board behind each candidate. Now, we help with that by providing a portion of that trifold board based on a capability assessment I'll talk more about in a minute. But the rest of the trifold board is entirely up to the candidate, what they want to do with it. They can put, artifacts of their expertise and other things that they have, if they've won awards, whatever they want, if they're board to present to prospective employers. But to help with that, just like Tracy was talking about mentors, we also make available to those who participate in the talent fair professional coaches who will help them devise their booth and help them think through how to develop what they need for that booth so that they'll be successful in presenting themselves. And to help support that, we have a tremendous resource made available to us through our partnership with Accenture. So Accenture has made available to us all of the training materials they provide to their people, their professionals. And those are available now to students or other job seekers to, again, create the kind of skills that employers are looking for. Okay. So to give you a sense of what this looks like, let me briefly pull up a little YouTube video about the job fair.
Do you know what is happening?
We'll have to skip through,
It's the
unfortunately,
control of the
ad on
April.
There we go.
I'm
And now,
Lucy. Nice to meet you.
It's called Meet the
can you hear
Engineers.
it? Okay.
I'm from Garmin.
Okay.
I really love this layout for a career fair because it allows employers to go seek out specific people with the skills that they're looking for.
More than 60 companies which are searching for new hires already know who they want to meet. That's because prior to the event, St. Thomas engineering students posted their resumes.
We're going to take it off the line here, so we need you to figure out everything in between.
Sure. I graduated from St. Thomas in 2007, and I actually got my first position at Anderson out of the program here at St. Thomas. Now I come back for the reverse career fair every year to help find great interns and hopefully full-time folks to join the team also. That was what drew me to your resume, is that more hands-on manufacturing type work.
Yeah.
Students advertise their accomplishments, design projects, and work experience, then wait for their next potential opportunity to come to them.
I found your resume ahead of time and wanted to talk with you about what you want to do after you graduate. I'm looking for people that are open to do maybe an international rotation.
Employers cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time.
Do you like the design or the test form? It's nice because the students have information that they've prepared and definitely are ready to talk to employers. We've done a little bit of homework ahead of time to see who we want to talk to, so we can kind of target those types of students that we're looking for. We do have a manufacturing engineer position available.
For students, the reality of what's ahead starts to take shape.
And I'm super passionate about finding young talent, the next engineers that we're going to have at our company.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
That gives you a feel for it. This was an engineering one. It was done by a news organization, so I thought it's very professional. it obviously was not cyber, it was specifically engineering, but it should give you the same idea. And to help students in developing this, a number of years ago, under a program called Raise the Bar that was sponsored by the National Institute for Standards and Technology, NIST, and their related program, the National Initiative for Cyber Education, we developed something called Raise the Bar. BAR stands for Behaviorally Anchored Ratings. And they are very effective at eliminating any bias in hiring, and were used specifically, in our case, by folks like IBM to more than triple the candidate pool for their jobs, because they realized, as a result of using our BAR assessments, they were overlooking tremendous groups of talent because they had been biased against things like community colleges or those coming from certain populations. And not that was intentional. In fact, just the opposite. IBM was spending incredible amounts of money to try to diversify their workforce, and it was still 95% white male. And they were struggling to find talent. And what we explained to them was, well, that's part of your problem, right? You're only looking in pools that are giving you 95% white males. What if we opened up the pool? And so we use these assessments and got IBM to stop looking at a resume. You heard that example. Well, they sent their resume ahead of time. We send them something way better than a resume. It's a capability profile. And it shows them to what percent does this individual match their needs. And they don't expect 100% match. No one would have that. But they expect a reasonable amount of match. And more importantly, they want to know what is it that doesn't yet match that with some proper training, they can get matched. And so IBM used these capability profiles to select individuals for the jobs they had open. They filled all those jobs. They filled them equally with women and men. exactly what you'd expect from an unbiased environment. And 3 out of the 4 that they hired in this one instance came from underrepresented groups. Individuals with no post-secondary education, individuals with no formal post-secondary education. They came out of the military, but hadn't yet gone through a post-secondary school, and those who came from 2-year programs that it normally would have been overlooked by their traditional approach. So this is what an example report looks like. These reports would be put on that poster board. We print them for the students that come to the talent fair, and they have their profile of what are the areas that they have expertise in. Are they beginner? Are they proficient? Proficient meaning I understand, but I'm not yet practiced enough to do it competently, whether they're competent or whether they're an expert. And then we also align those with varying frameworks like the NICE framework, or if there are responsibility areas that employer has identified are going to be important to them, which of those responsibility areas are they high in terms of their capability mapped to? Are they medium, or in some cases they may be low? And then we break that out by respondent. Notice there's no name here. So when they get that first match, they don't really know what your name is. So they don't get biased by a name, which is one of those things called implicit bias, where without really trying to, people do get biased by a name or where somebody went to school or where they come from geographically. So by eliminating all that, and they just see the profile, all that bias goes away. And they find the person that meets their needs. They can identify areas that they really are strong in. The medium areas, maybe they need a little bit further development, and they can plan for that. And they can hire this person right away and often be surprised by, oh, I didn't realize that I could hire somebody from this background. And that's what happened in the case of IBM. So to also help the students enhance those areas where they may be weak, and oftentimes those areas are those so-called soft skills that are really hard to learn, is the academy that's made available to us through Accenture and our partnership with Accenture. And it provides, you can see a large number of modules that are broken down into different kinds of courses: choosing careers, getting a job, success in work, and provides very detailed instruction for that. But to match that, we assign each and every person that's going through this program a coach. And that coach has been certified by the International Professional Coaching Organization to ensure that they can help them think through all of these issues about choosing the right career, getting a proper preparation for that job search, and then getting promoted once they're in that job. So how do you get involved? Very simple. You click on that link, and I should put the QR code. That's one thing I should do, Gus, is for the next version. Oh, it's there. I didn't see it. Put it over there left. If you can take that QR code, or you can click on that link, it'll allow you to submit an application for the Cyber Ready Professional Skills to Succeed coaching program. That will tee you up to be able to get a talent fair booth. Of course, you'll want to use the previous links that I showed earlier to figure out what location you would like your booth at: Southwest 3CS, at Great Lakes 3CS, or at the upcoming ones, which will be recycling around for Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and Southeast, and again, eventually others. So let me stop there and see if there are questions or concerns that anyone might have that I can answer.
I have, is this booth only at the final, or will this be at every one of them?
It's at every one. It's at every regional event. And it happens on Friday evening before all the other activities are going on. To your point, Tracy, you want to make sure people don't have a conflict. So it happens only at those, only in the evening on Friday. It also, by the way, the only thing that's not really a conflict with it, but the only thing that's going on at the time is the cyber arcade where people get to play. But that also goes on after the talent fair is over. So those who are involved in the talent fair can still, kick around some tires and, enjoy some of the games afterwards in a more leisurely reception-like environment. It's also a great way after the talent fair to just network with others and build up your professional network. So that's all that happens, though, on Friday evening, along with keynotes that happen before the talent fair, and again, are not in conflict with anything else.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Other questions? Mike, you've been kind of quiet. Is there anything that I can answer for you? Perhaps throw it in the chat if you don't want to bring it up orally, or feel free to unmute yourself. Gus, were there any questions that you've heard over time from members of the association that I might be able to answer?
Yeah, so students wanted to know what type of ticket type do they register for when they sign up for the event?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's go back to one of these. Whoops. Right, there we go. So let's go ahead and go into the registration system and take a look. Should have done that in.
Also, too, is there discounts for so the Southwest 3CS is coming up. Is there discounts for students at Texas A&M University?
There are, and that's true of every host institution, is that all students, all faculty from the host institutions can attend for free. And that's true of multiple, if they have multiple campuses, it's true of the other campuses as well, if they would like to have their students and faculty attend. When you click that link, you will come to this page. And again, you could do the QR code or the link, and it'll bring you here, show you the dates and times, the location. It'll tell you a little bit about the event, which I've already talked to you a little bit about. We're going to be listing out some of the top-rated hotels soon for those who are interested in coming on site. Again, you can also attend virtually. It repeats what I said earlier about the different types of symposia. It talks more about what to expect, some other areas I haven't really touched on, like awards, and who the type of people who should attend, and a little bit of it about the agenda. And then at the bottom, it provides information on pricing. Again, very important to get in there as soon as possible, before 30 days before the event. There's a very large 75% discount off of the event registration fee. Of course, that's further discounted for those in, eligible for some of these other discounts. And then, of course, there's still a slight discount that comes from pre-registration. That's before 10 days before. And then it's the full price at after 10 days before. And then if somebody shows up on site, there's an increase. So very important to register ahead of time. Now, in addition to that, there's student association chapter discounts, premium member discounts, and then academic chapters. So faculty who are academic members of CyberWatch can receive discounts associated similarly to students. And then what is the cost? Well, general admission is $100 if you're in that period 10 days before up to the day of event. So again, applying the discount to that, it's only $25 for early birds. And the employer job fair, that's for the employer to have a booth. That's $2,000 they pay to be there. So they're going to really send their best people because they're spending a decent amount of money to make sure they're coming to see that right talent. So they're going to have good people there waiting to see you. For someone who's going to have a talent fair booth but doesn't want to attend the other functions of the event, it's only $50 for them to attend. Again, that's before any other discounts. Okay, and as I mentioned, these are priced separately and depends on the workshop itself. Now, what other discounts are available? Well, first of all, there are stipends for attendance that can reduce or eliminate these fees, as well as provide support for travel. The different types of registration are shown here on the left. So if I'm a session facilitator, one we'd hope almost everyone would want to be. So if you proposed a session and that session's been accepted for that event, you receive free registration along with a travel stipend based on the distance from the venue. Now, it does mean you do need to actively participate in person for the travel, because otherwise you wouldn't need the travel. If you're attending virtually, obviously you don't need a travel stipend. But if you're attending in person and you have a session that you're going to be facilitating at the event, you'll receive an access code when your session is accepted, and that access code will get you free registration along with the eligibility for the travel stipend. So you wouldn't register until you've gotten that approval, and then you would choose registration option 1. If you're someone who's helping with reviews, and the formulation of proposals, as well as those who are members of the program committee, like the committee chairs and their members of that committee. They receive what are called a Cyber Ready G-Force Fellow registration type, which again provides a free registration. And so those who are very actively engaged in helping run the conference, because the conference takes a village. So those who help us put it together, help us schedule out the events and whatnot, and support the committee chairs, they also can get free registration. Now, for those who aren't either of the above, as I mentioned, it starts at $25 if they are registered 30 days prior. But if they're a chapter advisor, meaning faculty, at institutions that have an NCSA chapter, it's only $12.50, 50% discount. Similarly, if I'm a chapter member, so Tracy, for instance, for all of your members, and you can get $12.50 discount off, which produces a $12.50 registration fee. So very inexpensive to attend. And of course, for the event that happens at Mid-Atlantic, it's free because it's your campus. Mm-hmm. So it's only if you want to attend some other one somewhere else, you'd have to worry about that $12.
That's right. Okay.
And that's only assuming you're not already facilitating a session there. Okay. Then there's the chapter members that, I'm sorry, I did chapter members. Then there's remote attendance. And again, there will be discounts off of this for people who have these other categories, but remote attendance basically is $25. And then I mentioned general attendance already. Those who are going to compete in the regional competition to qualify for the national. I said before, there's a max of 5 per team. For the competition itself, there's a separate fee of $25 per member and $50 per coach. Okay. And then there's sponsors that attend. That's really a separate issue. So those are the different registration types. You can access them all through the QR code or the link that is provided here in the presentation. And of course, Gus, I guess what we should maybe do is cut and paste these into the chat, or you can make them available on the website for the download of the recording. I suppose that might be even easier.
Sure. Another question is, what type of volunteer opportunities can they do at the conference, or is it committees they can participate in?
Yes, there are. And as I mentioned earlier, those who do participate actively in the committees are registered as Cyber Ready Fellows. And so they get free registration in exchange for obviously really supporting the entire community with their services. So that is our call for committees. I will put in the chat, if you give me a second here, the link to that that call. And there's a short little form that you fill out to indicate the committee that you might be interested in joining, as well as the location of the committee that you would like to serve on. So you can choose to serve all of them, not be particular about which committee location. You could choose to do it for the national event or for any of the regional events. And so this is in the chat, the link to join a 3CS committee. It's really pretty simple. HTTPS there, bit.ly/join-3CS-committee-2024. And so that will enable you to have join the committee of your choice. Other questions? All right, I think we've covered a large ground. Of course, at any time, if you'd like more information about the CyberWatch events, CyberWatch programs, to learn, specific or to get answers to specific questions, I'd encourage you to send an email to info@nationalcyberwatch.org. I have pasted that in the chat as well, and we'll be very happy to answer your questions and hope to see you at a future 3CS event. Thank you all for attending tonight. And again, looking forward to seeing you all and having you all participate and help us make 3CS even better as the Signal event in cybersecurity education. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.